Um, so before we get into that, just I guess a quick history of who I am and how I ended up here. My name is Lewis Jaffrey. Obviously, I'm from a very small town in Scotland, so you're going to have to pardon my accent. My hometown is about 2,000 people, and there's over 20 pubs and bars in this small town with only 2,000 people, which means there's a very high demand for bartenders. So the day after I turned 18, I started tending bar. That summer, I worked in 3 bars over the course of the period, and obviously being a small town, you have 2 lifestyle choices. You either get a trade and get a local girl pregnant and stick around and put down some roots, or you go to the big city, which for me was going to Edinburgh and studying at university. Now, at this time, I was still working in bars and restaurants, and uni was kind of boring, so I figured I could either continue with uni or be paid to be at the best parties in town. Now, I very quickly got asked to work full-time in this nightclub I was working at. I remember it quite specifically. After a few drinks, went home, they'd asked me to work full-time, and I was watching the movie Cocktail, Tom Cruise movie. I know this sounds ridiculous, but in that movie, he becomes a career bartender, and I kind of thought to myself, can I do this as a career? Am I passionate about it enough? Can I make a living out of this? And the next day I quit university and became a full-time career bartender. Now, that was a very conscious decision I made, and with that, it was a big lifestyle change. I was like, if I'm going to do this as a career, I need to treat it like one. So I identified the best in that industry in Edinburgh, and I set about trying to find work from them. A bar called Tonic, very small bar in Edinburgh city centre. It took me a couple of months, but I convinced him to employ me. Became a bartender there. Now, I was only 20 years old at this point, and all of the bartenders working there were 30 years old. So my learning curve was huge. Like, I picked up so much information, but they were great bartenders. None of them could manage their way out of a paper bag. So I very quickly, within 6 months, became the general manager of this bar, and that was kind of my career path almost taken care of. Over the next 10 years, I work in bars up and down the country, London, Edinburgh, do some time in the States, before finding myself on the shores of Australia. Now, I was very lucky and landed here in 2011, just as the small bar scene was kind of taking up. It was all starting to blow up. I think Clover Moore had really driven it forward, and I was very lucky to work in a small bar called Grandma's Bar down on Clarence Street. Again, tiny, tiny little venue. 2 fantastic operators, friends of mine. They took me in, and I worked there for the next 10 months until I started working at the Baxter Inn, which is now this very famous worldwide bar. It's won top 10 bars in the world 5 years in a row. Excuse me. And I saw the achievements that these small bar owners and operators were achieving. And as much as I enjoyed operating their venues and their systems for them, I wanted some of that success for myself. I did all of the hard work. The owners of the business took all the kudos. So I was like, I want to do a business of my own. And how do I do that? It seemed quite daunting at first, but a good friend of mine, Jared Merlino, he just opened up the Lobo plantation across the road, and we talked about how do we do a business together now. I've been in this industry for 17 years now, and I've seen a lot of bars come and go, and I think the ones that tend to pass by are the kind of gimmicky bars. We've all been to them where they tend to jump on the latest trend. They see froze, they do a froze bar. They open a burger joint because everyone likes to burger. It could be a kale juice bar. It could be a vampire-themed living room. It's whatever happens to be on point on that given day. They think, I want to do this. It's going to be great. It's what the customers want. But there's no love. There's no passion in that. They're just trying to jump on a trend. And trends, by their very nature, go out of fashion in order to be taken over by another trend. So if your business model is based upon following trends, you're never going to do well. What we realized was that you have to do something with passion. You have to love it. If you're going to try and employ people, sell your product to people, be involved with a community, you have to love what you're going to do. While we were building the restaurant, we were working 100 to 120 hours a week. You can't do that if you don't love what you're doing. So we realized we need to do something that we enjoy. And this is when we came up with our rather unusual concept. We'd become good friends. We were going away on weekends together with our girlfriends, and we spent all of our time eating Italian cheese, drinking Italian wine, listening to hip hop. And the realization of there must be a cheaper way to do this because cheese is expensive in Sydney suddenly came to us. we wanted to do an Italian cheese and hip hop bar. Now, in our heads, it sounded ridiculous. And it still makes me laugh when somebody says it to me now. But whenever we mentioned it to our friends, they were like, I love cheese. I love wine. I love hip hop. Like, this is my perfect venue. How could it not go well? So we set about trying to find a space. And then Big Poppa's was born. So the concept for Big Poppa's was we wanted to do late night trading. Why late night in Sydney, though? There was such a gap in the market. With the lockout laws coming in, there's still a lot of people out in the streets between 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They just don't have anywhere to go. We were very lucky to come across a Hello Sailor site, which has a restaurant license with a PSA. So we are open till 3 o'clock in the morning, and the lockout law doesn't affect us. Now, why is this such a benefit to us? Being in this industry for the last 5 years, finishing work at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, me and my mates, we want to go out for a beer. Sydney hospitality is a real community. There's a real sense of camaraderie and family amongst people. So before lockout, we used to all catch up at Frankie's or some other late night venue, have a beer, tell tales of what had just happened that shift or over the day before. Much like any day worker, we call it Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 worker. Imagine finishing work on a Friday at 5 o'clock and being told you cannot go for a beer after work to unwind. You can't have that release. You have to go straight home because it's too dangerous. That's what happens to hospitality workers, shift workers, chefs, taxi drivers. These people can't go out and have a drink when they finish work at 2 o'clock in the morning. And it seems unfair. So that was where we came in. We hoped rather than people going to, I guess the only other option at this point is the casino, which is less than safe compared to others, we hoped people would come to Big Poppa's. Now, we didn't want to be like other late night venues, serving drinks in plastic cups. Music so loud you can hardly talk, let alone hear yourself think. We wanted to give the same experience at 7 o'clock in the evening as we do at 3 o'clock in the morning. So we operate the exact same food menu. You can come in and have a full meal right up until 3 o'clock. You can have a nice glass of wine from a bottle. You can have a great cocktail. And that was the priority for us, to make sure that you get the same experience, whether you come in the afternoon or at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the advantages it gave us was that we almost got a double business. We trade like a normal restaurant, get nice and busy between 5 and 10 o'clock in the evening. And then at midnight to 3 o'clock, we get this huge resurgence of business. If you come into the venue at 1 o'clock in the morning, we have 48 seats, fully taken. Everyone's having a 2 or 3 course meal, a nice bottle of wine, and they're talking to each other. The venue is set up to be conducive that you can still have a conversation. We have a cocktail lounge downstairs where you can go down and dance or have a good time if you want to, but the whole point was to give that same experience throughout. Now, there were obviously some hurdles with this. With the lockout laws, the police are under quite a lot of pressure to drill down to venues like this. We made sure that we had meetings with the police well in advance of taking on the venue. They've been in several times. They're under a lot of pressure to make sure that they're catching people in the act if they are breaking the law. And it's our job to make sure that we're not doing that. Operating within the boundaries of the law is so important within Sydney. And there's certainly people who can help with that, like the City of Sydney, like the OLGR. There are departments who are there to help you figure out the pitfalls of the licenses that you operate under. So doing your research in that can make a huge difference. What we wanted to create was safe late night drinking, because that's such a priority now. With the lockout laws, the whole point of those were to create a safer environment to people who go out at night. We want to be the showcase that this can still happen. People can come into our venue at 2:30 in the morning, not get into a fight, beat each other up, lose their wallet, struggle to get home, have a civilized time and act like an adult. And that's exactly what we've managed to do. Touch wood, long may it continue. But it is a hard journey. I guess there's 3 pieces of advice I'd highly recommend before you go into your own venture or venue or going into business for yourself that I wish somebody had told me more about going in. Firstly was that it will be the hardest thing you have ever done. I've opened several venues before, and I thought it would just be the same. It's not. It takes over your entire life. And explaining that to your friends, your family, your co-workers, that your relationship may suffer, is a tricky hurdle to overcome. And open lines of communication about what you're about to go through, even if you're planning a year, 2 years ahead, can make the biggest difference to those relationships. Because essentially, these people are your support network. And when you're working 120 hours a week and things aren't going the way you want them to, these are the people that are going to help carry you through that tough time. Second thing is your business partners. The people you choose to go into business with are so important. And it's too easy to find people who are the same as you to go into business with. You almost need to find the yin to your yang. If you're the best bartender in the world and you're great with customers, but you don't understand what a GP is or how a spreadsheet works, you might not want to go into business with someone like you. You need someone to counterbalance that. You need someone who can understand the legal pitfalls, who understands licensing, spreadsheets, how to handle the police. So business partners are very, very important. They need to bring things to the party that you don't necessarily have. And then the most important thing that you will do if you're starting a business within the service, certainly within the service industry, is your staff. These people are going to represent you, your brand, your ethos. They are the embodiment of what you want to be. If you're not involved, if you don't love it, if you're feeling lazy, if you let things slide, they're going to do the same. You have to be on point all the time. We have a phrase in the industry, the fish rots from the head. If you're not fully committed, if you don't love what you're doing, if you're not passionate about it, no one's going to be passionate for you. That passion is what draws good people to you, and that's so important. Staff morale can make or break a good business. The way we try and keep our staff on point is we give them all 3 days off a week. They have a late start, an early finish, and they have 3 days off in a row together. That means that they can have a life outside of work. Nobody wants to live to work. They want to work to live. The whole point of it is to make people happier in their roles, and they're going to give the very best that they can for you.